Exciting show today. Thank you. Thank you. I'm your host, Cris with the Pipe podcast. That's right, Pipe. And we talk about sales process, sales initiatives, sales prospecting, and sales experiences. I've got my friend, colleague, Greg Birch on today. Exciting episode. Greg, thanks so much for joining us today. Really, really great for you to be here. Thank you.
Cris, for having me.
Yeah, you got it. So, listen, we're going to jump right into it, but I'd like to give you the podium for a second and just have you take the hot mic right now, Greg, and just, tell our listeners and viewers a little bit about the world that you run and kind of what you do. And if you wouldn't mind just giving a little background and then we'll jump right in.
Yeah, sure. So definitely. So I am a prior Army officer, a veteran, served for 11 years in the military, in the Army. And I went to both Iraq and Afghanistan. And in 2017, I decided to get out of the military. And once I got out, I wanted to get into sales because they have for junior military officers that are getting out, because I was a captain promotable when I got out, they have headhunter companies that you can go through and they do testing to try to connect officers with Fortune 500 companies. And they do a lot of, they translate a lot of the verbiage of the responsibilities of the job positions that you held, et cetera, in order to connect you with higher level, executive level leadership positions. Mm-hmm. But they test you ahead of time, and I always tested very high in sales. And so I've never really done sales before.
Right.
Tested really high in it. So when I got out, I ended up getting into insurance by happenstance because I went to an Indeed ad that was like sales leading to management. And I was like, I like leadership because I was an officer and I'm good at sales because this test told me so.
Right.
So I showed up to this interview and it ended up being insurance. And I was kind of like, I don't know about this. But at the end of the day, I was like, you know what? There's people that are making money here. Why not give it a try? And I'm glad I did because I'm still in insurance today. And that was in October of 2017 when I started it, when I got my license. And ever since then, I started as a baby agent and I worked my way up into creating my own independent marketing organization, or IMO, basically an insurance agency where I connect with multiple insurance carriers and I have brokers across the nation. And that is Delta Financial. And so, I learned a lot along the way. I made a lot of mistakes, and now I coach agents on not only just on sales, but on how to be better people. Because I really believe sales is very much of a personal development space because it's all on you. Yep. Your performance, the money you make, you have to be consistent and disciplined in your schedule as much as possible. And those are the people that are the most successful. So.
That's exactly right. And I just love it. And, first of all, thank you for your service. Thank you so much. My father was in the Army as well. So, we celebrate him also every day just for, keeping us safe and taking that pathway. And it really means a lot to us. So thank you for that. So, hey, I wanted just to ask a little bit because you kind of touched on it, and when you got into sales and you started to, kind of run your own company and do your own, do the insurance side and just start to dig in that way. How important was it for, you to build specific and good habits, to make sure that you're going to, at least give yourself an opportunity to succeed? It sounds like that was part of the process.
It definitely was. I don't know about you, Crispin, but I feel like the salespeople that get into sales initially and they have initial success, I feel like they have the most challenging time because 9 times out of 10, when they have the initial success, they're not doing the steps the right way. It's almost like a natural kind of luck or natural ability that has them have that success, and it never lasts. And that was exactly what happened to me. So when I first got into insurance, the first 3 to 6 months, I was crushing it. I was just selling all kinds of stuff. And then it started to go downwards. It started to go, downhill, and my sales started to decrease over time. And I didn't understand why, because I feel like I'm doing the same things I've always done. But I eventually, about a year later, in November of 2018, I was in a different company as an agent, and I had a conversation with this guy, and top producer. He was crushing it, and so he was doing $15,000, $25,000 a week consistently, and I had a conversation with him, and just to kind of pick his brain and see, hey, what leads are you using, and how are you getting clients on the phone, and how you getting them appointments, et cetera. And he ended up saying, he gave me some help, and he said, hey, I live in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and he lives in Illinois. And he's like, hey, if next time I'm in Dallas, I go there once a month to go run business. Next time I'm in there, I'll link up with you, and we can just link up and have a drink or something. So he ends up meeting up with me, and the end of November. It's literally the Saturday before Thanksgiving on 2018. And so we ended up going to a bar and having a beer and having a piece of pizza in downtown Dallas. And I'm like, dude, how was your trip? Like, how much did you sell? And he's like, oh, I'm 36,000. And I'm like, whoa, is that for the month? Like, for the month? He's like, no, that's for my trip. He got there on Thursday. And it was like Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Those sales is 36,000, which is ridiculous. That's even ridiculous for agents in a month. And I'm like, dude, for the month, I'm at 3,000. You over 10x'd my monthly production in 3 days, and this is my town.
Oh my goodness!
What are you doing, bro? Like, what are you doing?
Right.
And he was like, well, let me ask you some questions and see if I can help you out. And so I was like, okay. So he asked me really basic questions. He asked me, hey, how's your lead flow? Are you investing back in the business weekly? Are you going to training weekly? Are you controlling your schedule? When you have dial days and you're setting appointments, do you lock yourself in and only do that? What are your goals, right? And as he's asking me these questions, I'm kind of tap dancing. I'm giving like answers like, oh, I bought leads like 2 weeks ago, but I want to make money before I bought some more. And like, oh yeah, I go to trainings when I feel like it's a topic that I don't know. But I've been in insurance for a year. Like, I already know this stuff.
Right.
And, hey, my goal is really I want to be able to just make enough money to survive right now. And he was like, hey, do you call on dial days? And I'm like, well, I'm kind of dialing every day at all times just to see when I can catch people. Right.
Yeah.
And he looks at me and he was like, Greg, hey man, I know what your problem is. And he like leans forward. It's all dramatic. He leans forward. He looks me in the eye and he's like, dude, you think you're special and you're not.
Perfect.
And it's for context sake, right?
Yeah.
Like, I got an ego, obviously. Like, look, I'm a pretty big dude, right? I'm like, dude, I've deployed to Afghanistan and Iraq. I've literally led soldiers in combat. And here's this guy who is a Russian American. He's had his American citizenship for about a year. He's only been in insurance for 1 year. He's looking at me and calling me, I'm not special. Like, right. I'm like, who does this guy think he is?
Right.
But he was so right. And he goes through, he starts breaking down all of these different things. Says, hey, the reason why I'm having the success I'm having is because I'm not special either. And I understand that. So I go to every training. I invest in leads every week. I lock down my dial days. I set a minimum of 30 appointments a week because I know my numbers. And he was like, here's my goals. And he said, this is my first year in insurance. And he wrote down his goal, which was he wanted to write $400,000 of insurance premium first year in the business, issue paid. And he had it his lock screen and his home screen, his phone. He was like, I see this every time I open my phone. It reminds me that I got to get to work. Right.
Right. That's right.
And I sat there and I just listened to him and I just listened. And I was like, you know what? He's right. And it's these basic fundamentals. It's not the perfect script.
Oh my goodness.
It's not that I all of a sudden like I got to have this magical sentence that's going to get people to buy.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's following disciplined fundamentals that are not optional if you want to have success in business. And too many people come in and they're like, oh yeah, that's good and all, but I'm going to do it my way. Like, I don't really operate well off of calendar. Well, then you're not going to be a very good sales professional that's 1099 and you're your own boss. You're just not.
Wow. It's so good. I mean, Greg, every alarm is going off right now, in my mind. which is scary because no one wants to see that, by the way. But I'll tell you, I mean, you are so, when we get into training with Sales Arbiter, we go into companies to help them train their teams, right? And we'll go through a whole outcome sales training program, which is, a custom program built on DISC, D-I-S-C, and then also, foundational training process that we instill in every single company that we serve, right? And so when we do that, and I'm going into organizations and I'm like, okay, let's take a look and see how your sales reps, and I use this word very specifically, how your sales reps are behaving, right? How are they behaving? What are those behaviors look like? And to your point, like what you just talked about, like those foundational processes and that's it. It's more going back to the basics and saying, do you have the number, are you setting a goal for the number of appointments like you had talked about? Are you setting, do you have talk time? Do you have your time that you're actually going to make calls? Do you have that designated? Are you buying leads? Are you building your leads? Are you doing, proper follow-up? Like we set up a whole system, what you're just talking about right now, which is the KBIs, key behavioral indicators. And that's how you're supposed to perform either daily or weekly. And then those roll up monthly. And those are just those foundational things that you need to do to build your business. Like that's exactly, what we talk about. And you can't imagine how many times we go into organizations and they don't have those basic fundamentals. Like they don't have those, and they're tap dancing, and here's the funny part. The president, the CEO, the VP of sales, like they're the ones that are tap dancing. They're telling me why they don't have those, why they don't have those metrics in place or why they don't have those tools in place to just be able to peer into the window of sales and say, hey, this is how our company is performing against our goal, right? Mm-hmm. This is how our company is in most cases not growing because those reps are not doing those basic fundamentals that you just talked about. I mean, it's so vitally important. And I'm assuming that like in your world, and let me take you back to, some of the lessons that maybe you had learned in the military. Mm-hmm. I mean, when you talk about basic fundamental concepts, I mean, we're not just talking about, oh, you make a mistake and then maybe it works out next time. I mean, we're talking about sometimes the difference between life and death. Am I right?
Yeah, absolutely. And especially with life insurance, I can't tell you how many times that I was, it's happened numerous times where I would get a lead and I would call somebody and they would be like, oh yeah, I'm busy right now. Call back later. And I would not be diligent and not calling them back. And eventually I'd call back like a month later and then they would be like, they would be in tears, like, oh, well, my husband actually passed away, got in a car accident. Mm. It's like, dude, if I would have been more diligent, they would have had protection in place and that family would be way different off right now. Mm. If I had actually been a little bit more persistent with calling my leads, with following up, with, following these fundamental traits. And just to get everyone an understanding of how powerful this is. In 2018, before in the year that I had this conversation at the end of the year, I wrote a total of about $75,000 worth of premium. That was my first full year of insurance. And I probably deposited about $65,000. In 2019, I followed exactly what he said. I literally, that night when I got home, I took out 2 pieces of paper and I was like, 2019, I'm going to write $400,000 insurance. I put it on my fridge and I put it on the wall beside my bed. I took a picture of one. I put it on my home and lock screen, my phone. So I was like, I'm going to see it all the time. In 2019, by following those same fundamentals, I didn't change as a person. I just started following a disciplined structure. Mm-hmm. I sold $425,000 worth of insurance and I deposited $360,000. Right. And so I literally completely changed my life just by following these very basic fundamentals. Right. And so, I would have agents that would reach out to me, dude, what are you doing? And they never liked my answer because I'm like, hey, what are you doing? I didn't say anything to me. Let me answer questions and let me see what's going on in your business. And I would just be like, hey, you think you're special and you're not. You're not doing this. You're not doing this. You're not doing this. Like, it's not that everyone wants that secret sauce. Everyone wants the cheat code. Everyone wants to know the shortcut. They think that there's some magic system that they just apply. It's going to be easy for them. It's not easy. It's consistent, boring, disciplined work, monotonous.
Oh my
and the
goodness.
successful people have learned how to master those monotonous things and do it whether they like it or not.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, we're touching on it a little bit here, Greg. But for those organizations, because you do coaching and mentoring, within organizations as well, right? I mean, that's part of what you do as well. And asking those tough questions, but when you look at, because it's tough out there right now. Like, there's no doubt, right? Right. I mean, and I've had many, people on this podcast and colleagues that I talk to daily. And the business environment out there, it's a little tougher right now. So how are you, what would you recommend? Like, what would you say are the 3 things that business owners or those that are maybe even in your vertical, what do they need to be doing to be successful and to end 2023 strong and to start 24, even stronger? What would you say some of the 3 basic things that they need to do, with themselves or their business, that can really have a positive impact?
Yeah, dude, that's a great question. I love this. So, my basic law of leadership is you have to master yourself first. You have to lead yourself first. And so if they're having challenges within their organization, they need to look within. If there's people that are not doing their job, salespeople, 1099, if they're W-2, it doesn't matter. If there's people within the organization that aren't doing what they're supposed to do, they need to look within and they need to look at what they're doing and they need to start leading by example. So the best thing they can do and the most important thing to do is to start operating at the highest potential level and continue to push themselves to raise the level. So like people, for instance, let's say that they rate themselves, or if they were to honestly rate themselves, they were a 7 out of 10. Well, that means that everyone on their team is going to operate about a 5 out of 10 at the highest. So if they want their people to increase, they have to increase their potential and their performance. And they need to jump up to a 9 out of 10 to get their people to a 7, or they need to jump up to a 10 out of 10 and get their people to an 8. And so that's probably the first thing that I would always say is look within yourself and really, and this can be something as simple as, reading daily. I'm a big proponent of reading every single day. I'm a big proponent of doing some kind of training, I listen to podcasts. I just got out of the gym. I listen to a podcast while I'm in the gym. I listen to audiobooks while I'm in the gym. Like, I'm always trying to feed my mind with content in order to help myself. I don't listen to music. I very rarely do because it doesn't pay me in any way. I can't use that in order to better myself. So, and then exercise. Exercise is keenly important. A lot of people don't like to do exercise. They don't think it's important, but it transcends to every other area of your life. So I'm really big about doing fitness coaching in order to help people excel in other areas of life. The next thing that I would say is during these times, there's always going to be difficult times. There's always going to be challenging times in any market that you're in. Okay.
That's right.
Yes, we're in a downtime right now. This is not the time for you to get scared and to button the hatches and wait it out, because there's other people that are capitalizing on this time frame. And if you wait and you batten down the hatches and you don't start acting, they're going to be way far ahead. They're going to get so much more market share.
That's right.
So you have to be out there and you got to be willing to take the risk, because if you can operate and find success in a downtime, you are going to dominate whenever times get good.
That's right.
And then you're going to be used to when things go negative again, which it always does. Right. There's always going to be ups and downs in the market. So when then you have another downtime, guess what happens? You are already adjusted to it. You already have thrived in that type of environment. So when you look around, people start batting down the hatchet. This is the time when I get to really make some ground, right? This is the time where my business is going to really make some changes, succeed, so that whenever we're on the upswing again, I'm going to just take off sprinting.
Yep.
So, you don't want to take this time to pull out of the race. If you were. And then last is always never feel that your systems that you have in place are perfect. you can always go back and look at your system. So like when it comes to a business being successful, it's going to be, your product, people, and processes. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
So the product that you have, whatever you're selling, service, item, doesn't matter. It has to be undeniably great. It has to be the best it can be, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then once you have that, then you have your people. And your people have to believe in the vision, the mission of the company, the core value that they live by. And if you're not living by it, they won't live by it. You have to openly live by it. And you have to lead by it. You have to hire and fire by it. You have to be willing to let people go. Hey, they may be a top producer, but if they are not living by the core values, they're a hindrance to your overall organization and everyone else's performance.
Mm-hmm.
There's a term that's called addition through subtraction. Sometimes you have to remove somebody, even if they're a good producer, you're going to have to remove them from your company because they don't live or believe in the core values that you and the company stand for.
Mm.
And then last is the processes, which is your systems. And that's how companies scale. You have to look at the system because a lot of times I've talked to so many business owners where they're like, oh yeah, my business is great. It's automated, scalable. But if I were to take one person out, everything would fall. A truly scalable strategy and system is if I take them out, anyone can jump in and get it and still do the job.
Right.
And then it's because then it's scalable. So like actually having SOPs in place of like how every single position is done. So that if my VP of operations, if he gets sick or if he has to leave for a period of time, I can put another person in there. They can look at this and say, okay, I know exactly what he does on a daily basis. And they can operate at like an 80% of his level right away. So
good.
Those are the three things I would say to look at right now.
It's so good. It's so good. Thanks for sharing that, Greg.
Yeah,
and I know that the viewers and the listening audience, they're getting a lot out of what we're talking about today, which is awesome. So let's shift gears for a second. Hey, life hasn't always been, peaches and cream for you, right? And you're pretty open about some of the challenges that you've gone through, and and that little, even that picture behind you, the cat seeing the lion in the reflection, right? I love it. I love it. And so let's talk about that. I mean, what were some turning points for you, not only in your career, but maybe in your life where you've really had to work on the mindset, where you've had to really, you've really had to be reflective and say, hey, something's got to change here, or the worst could potentially happen. What does that look like?
So I'm going to try to keep this as streamlined as possible because it's a long story. But when I was in the military, I was married, and I've got 4 kids together, and we had 4 kids together. And so when I was in my first deployment in Iraq, she had cheated on me. And I found out about it, and we just kind of brushed it under the rug. I just, at first I was like, because she was very upset. She didn't like there was a lot of factors that were in play there.
Sure.
We'd never had that long of a separation. I'd never been in a deployment before. We'd been married. It was our second kid had just been born. And, she was very depressed, and then she didn't want me to be in the military anymore. And I was like, nope, I'm staying. And so she kind of took this whole like, hey, I don't want to be together anymore. I don't want to be with you anymore. And I don't think I love you anymore. And this is why I'm deployed. And then she ended up cheating on me. And so when I found out, I was just like, okay, fine. You know what? Let's get a divorce when I get back. And when I did that, the pendulum swung the other way. And she was like, no, let's work on it. But we never addressed what actually happened.
Right.
And so when I got back, we ended up just kind of sweeping on the rug. We stayed together, had another kid. And then we left that location. We went to, it was in Fort Hood, Texas. And then we went to Fort Huachuca, Arizona for training. And then from there, we went to Fort Carson, Colorado, where I was at 4th ID. And I deployed to Afghanistan. I deployed to Afghanistan there in 2012 and had a great deployment. Our communication was much better. We didn't have any issues. Come back. When I came back, I went back to Fort Huachuca, took command. That was when I was in company command. And I had to go back home to Clarksville, Tennessee, where I'm from, because I had a buddy of mine that I grew up with that passed away in his sleep. And so I had to go to the funeral. So she bought the ticket and she had put it under her email address. And so I literally was like 2 days later, I was in the airport. I was trying to find the ticket to get the the record locator number so I could log in.
Right.
As I'm scrolling through her email, I saw an email from this guy. So and I was like, and I realized, and I started scrolling, kept looking up. He had been in contact with her this whole time. And I was, and even especially when I was in Afghanistan, and I couldn't take it. I was like, I lost it. And so, when I got back, I ended up cheating on her, and then I felt guilty about it. And I told her about it. And I said, we tried to go through counseling and therapy and didn't really work. And so we decided, I said, I think it's best if we separate, right? I think we're like, the trust is gone. We're always going to be wondering. If every time I deploy, I'm going to be wondering, are you with somebody? And every time I'm with a new unit, you're wondering, is there any females there that are attractive that you might like? And so we ended up getting a divorce. And that was probably the lowest. That was the start of the decline for me. That was when I started to get really depressed, because I'm used to having all my kids here at the house with me. And all of a sudden now the house is empty. That was when depression started to sink in, and loneliness. And so I sought companionship and love from external sources, from people. So I jumped from relationship to relationship. And I was never, from the time I got divorced in 2015 until about 2020, till the end of 2020, I was never single longer than 3 days.
Wow.
Because I just couldn't deal with it. Like I would latch. As soon as I found somebody, I would like latch to them. And it was like, we were together for a minimum of like 8 months, sometimes up to like 2 years. Right. In all these varying different frames of the 1, 2, 3, 4 main relationships I was in from the time 2015 to 2020. And so, in 2018, I had the first time when I realized that I needed help. Was, I got into the woman I was dating at the time. We got into a big argument and over something that was ridiculous. It shouldn't even been an argument. And, it got so bad that she turned to I'm leaving you. I'm done. I hate you, blah, blah, blah. Those feelings of loneliness started to sink in and creep in. And I spent the day, she like locked the door to her bedroom, and I spent the day drinking from like 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. and just spiraling in my mind, going out of control. And I eventually stopped because I was like, I got to go to work. I was in insurance. This is when I was terrible. It was in 2018 when I wasn't good. I'm like, well, upstairs, I'm like, going to get ready for this appointment. And she's like, what are you doing? I was like, I got to go to work. And she's like, you've been drinking. You're drunk. And I was like, I'm fine. I'll be fine. And she's like, well, let me take you. And I'm like, no. You don't love me. You leave me. I'm getting obstinate. And she's trying to console me, but I take this time to be like, hey, look, like, this is how I feel. And I was trying to explain to her, like, the way that my mind is working and how I'm spiraling out of control. And like, I had these feelings like I didn't even want to be there, like on planet Earth. I didn't even want to be alive.
Oh God.
I'm trying to explain this to her, like how I feel. And she looks at me and she's like, well, why don't you go effing slit your wrist then?
No.
So, yeah, swear to you.
Oh my goodness.
And that was like a moment in time when I was like, no one loves me. That's the sign. And so I very calmly walked over and I grabbed my pistol out of the closet. It was in a locked box. I started unlocking it and she's freaking out. And she's like, what are you doing? And I was like, not even paying attention to her, unlocking it, pulling it out, like loading it. She calls 911. She runs out of the room. Long story short, cops come. They come in force. It's like 10 SWAT cars, almost. It wasn't SWAT, but it was a lot. They're out there like on a bullhorn, like, Gregory, no, with your hands up. Like, it was insanity. And I called a buddy of mine. I was like, dude, this is it. I can't do this anymore. Like, I'm so unhappy. And he was like, well, have you done anything yet? I was like, what do you mean? He's like, did you fire the weapon? No. Did you hit anybody? No. Did you hurt yourself or anyone else? No. He's like, dude, it's not over. Go talk to the cops. Stop being silly. Right. And so I was like, all right. So I went outside. As soon as I went outside to go talk to the cops, like, I unloaded the weapon, went outside. It just broke down, man. Like, every emotion hit me like a wall. And I just started crying profusely, like, just snot coming out. Like, I couldn't see. And the cop was asking me questions. He could see, you can't tell, but above that mindset poster behind me, there's a huge flag. That's my guide on colors that were from when I was in command. And it used to hang in my living room above my TV. And when I walked outside, I left the door open. I didn't close it. Like, and he could see from his angle straight in. He could see that those big colors. And he looked at me. He's like, did you serve? And I was just crying, like, yeah. And he's like, did did you deploy? And I was like, yeah. He was like, do you seek treatment with the VA?
Mm.
No. And
Mm.
he was like, dude, you need to. You brought some stuff back with you. Like, you need to.
Mm.
And that's when I started my personal development journey. So I started going to VA, started going to therapy. I realized I had a problem.
Yeah.
I got on medication. And what this did was it taught me my triggers so that I could exit out of situations really quickly if I felt myself getting anxious, because I didn't have much room, because I was always this high stress. Being an entrepreneur, high stress, being high stress.
Sure.
So I'm constantly, man, that was when I was a baby. That was when I was skinny. I was constantly at a like just a 80% stress level all the time. I wake up, I'm like percent stress. Now, the good thing about that is that a lot of things don't stress me out. The bad thing is that the things that do stress me out, I have very little room before my cup is overflowing. And when it does, that's when I'm like I start to spiral mentally, and I become reclusive. I draw away from people. And so I realized my signs, and I started when I was getting anxious, I was like, nope, I'm going to step out stage right. I'm going to go over here because I can't be around this.
Right.
So it wasn't until 2020, because I kept doing this whole relationship thing. It wasn't until 2020 when I had another relationship end, pretty spectacularly bad. But it was more on their side than mine, that I realized. I kind of looked at myself, and I was like, because my buddy was like, dude, you keep finding these crazy girls. And I was like, maybe I'm the problem.
Right. Right.
Like, maybe it's me. And so I decided for the first time in my adult life, I hadn't been single longer than 3 days since I had met my wife, and we were dating when I was like 19 years old.
Oh my goodness.
So now I'm in my 30s. I'm like 36. And I was like, I'm gonna be single for as long as it takes. And I spent that time really like getting my life in order. And I looked back at the time in the military.
Yeah.
And I was always fascinated with the military, and how the military can take anybody from any walk of life across the nation. Doesn't matter, what their race is. It doesn't matter their socioeconomic status. It doesn't matter their weight. Doesn't matter their gender. But they can take them. They can bring them to a single location. They can control all the variables, and they can turn them into warriors on the battlefield.
Unbelievable. Yeah.
And it's by certain things. They control when they sleep, when they wake up. They control how they clean. They're very disciplined about it. They control what they eat. They take away alcohol. They make them read. They make them do physical fitness daily. And it's control all these variables. And then they have an external accountability source, i.e. drill sergeants, forcing it.
Yeah.
You don't have an option.
Right.
What it does is that discipline over time stacks and compounds to where it really changes the person you are.
Yep. What
I found is that I did a similar thing. Is I'm going to work out every day. I'm going to get rid of alcohol. I'm going to drink so much water. I'm going to read a professional book every day. It's when I started reading. It's when I really focused on reading. And I've been an avid reader ever since. And I'm going to have a nutritious, diet. I'm going to get out of these processed foods and this binge eating, because I was like gaining weight and I was getting fat. I was unhappy with myself.
Yeah.
And I forced myself to do it by having external accountability by community. So I just post about it. I said, hey, I'm going to make this transformation. And I talked about it every day. I was like, I'm going to talk about it every single day. If I miss a day, that's because I didn't do it. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I still couldn't lie about it. And what happened was just transformational. It completely changed my life.
That's amazing.
And in every sense, like, it wasn't just a physical transformation. It was a mental, it was a spiritual alignment. I got better at sales. I started crushing records. I literally broke records, and I sold $225,000 in 1 month.
Oh, man.
And like the most I'd done in a month previous to this was like 60,000. And the most that anyone else had done previous to this in the company was like 110,000. So I literally doubled the record and smashed it. And everyone was coming to me like, dude, what are you doing? And I was like, they was again looking for the cheat code. And it was like, it's not that I have some extraordinary sales ability. It's that I've become a more extraordinary person that just happens to do sales.
Wow.
So my conversations were more genuine. My conversations, people could tell, I guess I had a higher energy.
Right.
I was operating off of a higher vibration.
Yep.
people could tell it. You know, subconsciously people could tell like this is a good person I trust kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I actually denied more sales than during that time frame because I was just operating at such a high level.
Mm-hmm.
But I would meet people and I was like, hey, I don't think the plans I have for you are the best plans for you. And here's why. Boom, boom, boom. And I know you can get this somewhere else at this price. And what I found was when I did that kind of stuff, I was that honest. They still either they still went with me, or they would send their family or friends, their acquaintances to me because they knew I was not going to lie to them. I would tell the truth.
That's right. That's right.
And it changed everything for me. And so I had this moment where I was like realizing that in my life, I had just been so focused on work and I wasn't really living other parts of my life.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started to just say yes. I don't know if you've ever read the book, The Surrender Experiment by Michael Singer.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great book. It's like if everyone's ever seen the movie Yes Man, it's like a real life yes man. It's what it is basically.
Right.
And so I started saying yes to all these things. So my buddy was like, well, why don't you go back to church? I was like, yes. And he's like, well, why don't you start tithing? Yes. I never tithed in my adult life.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And I was like, yes. And I started tithing. And then he was like, well, hey, why don't you pick up a hobby? And I ended up doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and just paid for it right then, started doing it.
Wow.
And he was like, hey, why don't you start a podcast? Because people are asking me about how I'm success and I was having these same conversations over and over again. He was like, why don't you start a podcast and just start recording about what you're doing? And I was like, yes. That's how I got into podcasting. Awesome. And like, here we are.
It's awesome. That's awesome.
So I'm in church this one day and I'm sitting there and I would usually repent during the time they give out sacrament. You know, I'm just like, I'm sorry I did this week. I'm sorry I did that. Like very, very vanilla, very basic. I'm sitting there one day. This is like maybe 4 weeks into going to church again. And I'm like 45 to 50 days into like consistently following this structure that I'm doing. So I like, and as I'm doing it, I'm getting more and more in alignment with myself.
Right.
And more things. It's almost like having the ability to read the matrix all of a sudden. And I realized that like all these things were within my control and like the things that were not going well in my life were because of the actions I was doing. I start to see things in a different light.
Right.
And so I'm in church this one day and I'm repenting and this voice comes in. It's like, as I'm going to end my prayer, it's like, you're not done repenting. You're not done saying sorry. Right. And it stops me in my tracks enough that I start to think, and I'm like, what was that? And I start to think the first thing that pops in my relationship was the relationship that had ended in 2020. And I was still hung up on that a little bit. And there were some things that she had did that I was really upset about. And I really like missed her too. And I re-looked at the relationship and everything that happened. And I took out everything she did. And I just looked at what I did individually by itself without any, well, this was because she did this kind of thing.
Yeah.
When I looked at it from that lens, I realized there was a lot of things I did that were not right. Regardless of like who did first. Doesn't matter. Two wrongs don't make a right. So I started to repent for those things. And I felt like this weight lift off of me and I let it go. And I just didn't even think about her anymore. I just didn't care. And so I then started working backwards because then it was just like, you got more to repent for. And I started working every single relationship all the way through to my marriage. And I looked back at that and I looked at that and I was like, man, I was a terrible husband, a terrible role model and a terrible father for cheating on her. It doesn't matter if she cheated on me first.
Right.
Doesn't matter how hurt I was. There were so many different things I could have done.
Right.
It was not okay.
Wow.
And I repented for that. And when I left church that day, I felt like a new man. Like it changed my life because I just took accountability for it. And it was difficult. I was actually like weeping in church as I was praying. It felt like I was repenting for like 25, 30 minutes, like the entirety of the rest of church. But I felt so much lighter because I realized I was holding on to all this and I was going from relationship to relationship and I was bringing this stuff with me.
Yeah.
All this angst and anger and also a lot of guilt and a lot of shame.
Yeah. Right.
And when I was able to let go of that stuff, I was able to elevate myself as a person. And it didn't just impact my physical self. It impacted my professional self. This is how Delta Financial even came to be. I wouldn't have not been able to start Delta Financial if I had not got the following of agents that wanted me to start something different and do something different because they saw the journey that I went on.
Yeah.
Knew me all this time.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't be having coaching or doing Delta Fit if I had not gone through this process.
Right.
And so
Right.
it improved every area of my life in such a magical way. And so now my overall goal in life is I want to make sure that I can help people to go through the same transformation that I did.
It's incredible. It's an incredible story. And and now I know why, or at least parts of why, Greg, you've been so successful, is because it's hard to be as transparent as you are. And I think that piece of if you want to call it honesty, integrity, or just transparency is lost in some cases in the business world, and also gets lost in the craft that we've decided to kind of follow, which is the craft of sales, and then just being able to share your story and the bravery that you have to be able to look and just take accountability for the things that you've done in the past, and then apply those in a way that have truly changed the person who you are today in comparison to who the person that you were. And, and then I would say the last part, which is really incredible, is another, lesson that you try to teach whenever you're mentoring or coaching or helping others, or even yourself, grow, which sounds something like, when you're actually working the position, when you're actually doing the work, the physical work that it takes to be successful, and you're doing all of these things, you're coming to the realization that, maybe I hadn't been doing things right in the past, how that impacts not only your personal life, but your professional life as well. Like, the tools that you use daily to help grow your business are also the tools that you should be using daily to grow, your inner self. And that is all about, the 6 inches between your ears. Like, it's just too good. And so, this is the time that we thank you so much for sharing that. This is the time that we typically pivot to the Sales Arbiter 7, if you're okay.
Yeah.
I'm just going to ask you some quick questions. And, this has resonated with a lot of our guests and those that watch the show and listen, because they get to have the opportunity to get to know you in a little different way. And we try and make it fun as well. So we're just going to jump right into those, Greg, if you're okay with that.
Yeah.
All right, let's go. So what is your favorite word, Greg? What's your favorite word?
Ooh, the first one that came to my mind was courage.
Courage.
Yeah.
Yep. Courage. I love it. And there's lots of reasons for that.
Yeah.
Lots of reasons for that, I'm sure. What's your least favorite word?
My least favorite word, it used to be failure.
Mm-hmm.
I was so keenly aware, or like afraid of like failing all the time. Mm-hmm. But ever since I've become an entrepreneur, I embrace failure because that's how we learn. It's how we grow. Like, it sets us up for what's to come.
Sure.
As you push through it.
Sure.
So I instead I see failure now as quitting. So quitting would be my least favorite word.
There we go. I love it. So what's something that could make your day, Greg?
Oh man. Honestly, just having a conversation with any one of my kids. Anytime they like reach out to me, like right now they're actually here so I live in Texas. They live in Florida with their mom during the school year. They're here for the summer, and they just got here for the summer yesterday.
Oh,
so they're here with me, and like just being able to like have a conversation that makes my day.
That's right. It's Father's Day every day when your kids are there with you.
I'm sure that's true.
That's exactly right. What's something that could ruin your day?
Ooh. Honestly, that's a really tough one. It used to be anything externally would be able to would ruin my day. Like if things didn't go my way, obstacles, challenges, my path. Ever since I started this journey, like I make sure that there's nothing that's going to stop me from doing my tasks that keep me disciplined. And those are physical fitness every day, reading every single day, staying on a nutritious diet, staying away from alcohol. Like there's nothing that's going to happen in the external world that's going to be like, well, today's such a tough day. And like, I need to have some McDonald's, or I need to go have a drink like I used to. And so,
right.
Honestly, I'm the only person that will get in my way. And don't get me wrong, I want to do those things sometimes. I think it.
Right, sure.
Like, yeah, I would really like a drink. I'd really love to have a whiskey right now.
Yeah.
But I can't. I don't let myself fall into that or fall victim to that.
Great.
So I guess I'm the only person that could make myself have that terrible time. And days. And so I'm constantly fighting against it.
That's great. That's a great answer. What sound or noise do you love?
There's a little chirp that's on that's a notification. It's like a bird tweet, like tweet. It's hard to do, but it's on my phone, and it is a notification for somebody that's very special to me. So every single time I hear it now, it makes me think of them.
Ah, great. That is great. What's a sound or noise that you hate? Right.
Anything that's loud and sudden, because it literally makes my heart jump. A loud bang.
Yeah.
If I don't feel or hear it coming, and I hear a loud bang, like it literally will stop my heart.
Yeah.
I almost want to get down on the ground.
Oh my God.
It's not as bad as it used to be.
Right.
Sometimes it would like literally like throw me into a panic. It's not as bad as it used to be since I've been in the military for a while, but most military people will know what I'm talking about just from mortar rounds and constantly being shot at. So,
gosh, can't imagine. I can't imagine. So last one, what profession other than your own would you have liked to attempt?
You know, I would have loved to own a gym. I wanted to own a gym for the longest time when I first got into fitness. And I'm not saying I never will. I may eventually.
Yeah.
But I wanted to own and operate my own gym, because there's nothing cooler than just be like, dude, I own a gym. I'm at the gym all day. I'm like helping people. I'm training. I'm coaching. Like,
yeah,
like that's when I'm in my element, I feel.
Yeah.
And so, I would say eventually, maybe one day, but that was that was the first business idea I had. I was going to call it Jacked and Tan. I was like a tanning booth in there, like all these like really nice tanning booths, and people would go work out, then go tanning, and
that's cool. So I'm going to help you with that one. So if you're still on the pathway that we just talked about earlier, then I'm going to help you with that one. So here's my statement. Hey, Greg, why don't you go buy a gym?
I should.
So now all you have to do is just say yes. That's it. Now all you have to do is say yes. Well, listen, it has been a joy having you on the program today. Thank you so much for being on the Pipe Podcast. And before we leave, let's make sure that everyone knows how they can get in touch with you if they need to talk with you, if they want to contact you, they want to talk with you about some of the consulting, services that you provide, or just, tap into that brain of yours of how you've become so successful in your role and with the organization. What's the best way?
The best way is my Instagram. It's Gregory A. Birch _. I do a lot of content. I'm constantly doing content daily in order to help people and with basically sales, leadership, mindset, marketing, physical fitness, that kind of stuff, everything across the sun. And if anyone is struggling, if anyone is looking for motivation, or if you're suffering with anxiety, depression, you're giving into your vices and your demons, and you can't seem to get out of that rut in life, I want you to reach out to me. I can give you some help, maybe a little kick in the ass, some motivation in order to help you in your life. Or if you're just looking for other coaching opportunities, because I coach on sales, on leadership, but then also on the physical fitness and nutrition. And we can discuss like what plan would be best for you to see if I can even help. And I always try to have a conversation, because I think fit is everything. Because I may not be the person for you, and you may not be the person for me. Like I also want to have the right clients that I know I can coach and I know I can help. Yeah. And if you want to learn more about my coaching, you can go to the deltafitlife.com website.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. All right. Well, listen, thanks again. And I close every show this way, Greg, but just keep selling and have fun doing it. Thanks for being on today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, guys. And thank you, sir. You guys have the best day ever today.
You too. You too. Bye-bye.